Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
And labor force participation, which is the labor side, is weaker than it was in the 90s, so it hasn't worked. Now, on the demand side, it did help a little bit, but much, much less than would have been the case had we given a tax cut to lower and middle-income Americans. We gave tax cuts to the very rich Americans who were...
I agree. We need to slash taxes on the middle class. The problem is the blue-collar folks think the middle class are the elite, Dr. Stiglitz. You know, I mean, that's the larger issue. And I want to get into your book in the time we've got, in the 15 minutes we've got left before we end this at 58 after with you, sir. But because it's a very powerful book. I saw the Financial Times of London about 8 months ago say that the headline that, bigger institutional banks could stand to gain from all this, and that they all played the game of issuing liquidity. They bought real assets. They grabbed infrastructure. They grabbed different commodities. And then now governments are coming in, bailing that out. They're gobbling up more banks. The Federal Reserve's talking about taking over 3 federal regulatory agencies, the private Fed. More foxes watching the hen house. And so I also see a predatory capitalism, and I'm for capitalism, but not the predatory crony type, here, where it's not just a bunch of people screwing up, it's a bunch of reckless people that knew they could create a money bubble that they could use to literally buy the planet up with, and then we, the people, get left holding the bag with hyperinflation and with taxes to pay it back.
Well, you've identified one of the big problems. What we've been doing is we've been socializing risk and privatizing wealth. And the banks walked off. A lot of the investors, investment banks walked off. Their senior officials with these huge bonuses, some exceeding $1 billion. Meanwhile, the taxpayers are being left to pick up the risk. The Federal Reserve exposed the taxpayers to a $29 billion risk. And we don't even know. It was done in so non-transparent way. We don't know fully how much we are totally at risk for it. Meanwhile, Bear Stearns shareholders walked off with over $1 billion of money, totally without paying a cent of insurance premium for the risk that taxpayers have picked up. I mean,
notice Bear Stearns got their bonuses right before all this happened. That was very suspicious. Was that used as a cover for J.P. Morgan Chase being in trouble, that they grabbed Bear Stearns? Because there's talk that they were in trouble as well, and there are a lot of other brokerage houses that were in worse trouble than Bear Stearns. But, I mean, that was very strange what happened there.
Oh, I agree it was very strange. All I can say is that there's a lot of lack of transparency in the financial markets, and to be honest, we don't really know what is going on.
Well, as you know, sir, in the last month, 3 big central bankers in Europe have said that in mid-March we narrowly avoided total financial collapse. Now, I know you're a very important person, Nobel Prize winner, former chief economist, World Bank. You don't want to freak people out or anything, but I mean, on the good side, 2 or 3 years of recession, tell me if I'm wrong, and then we come out of it with some new bubble, and then we just kind of have some inflation. On the bad side, just war in the streets, starving people, running around with machine guns. I mean, the government's building FEMA camps. That's in the news. Bush has said he's gotten ready for martial law. I mean, I'm sure you're an educated guy. You've seen that in the news. The government's acting really weird right now. What are the chances of the good side, bad recession, bad side depression, really bad side? Because we had a 1929 depression. Now, most people can't even have their own food, don't live on farms.
Well, right now, the world is in a rather unusual situation that at the same time we're facing one of the most troubling periods in terms of economic downturns with this almost $1 trillion losses on the financial system. We are also facing high levels of inflation that you referred to earlier. Price of oil is over $100 a barrel. Price of food is skyrocketing. While things are bad in the United States, we have to remember how much worse they are in most of the developing countries.
Food riots.
they have to spend most of their money to get by on food and energy, and with food and energy prices soaring, they're having real trouble. And it's not a surprise that riots have been breaking out in many developing countries, and I anticipate to see more of that. And that just highlights the difficulty that the global economy is facing.
Meanwhile, a few $1 billion could have fed these people, but instead, like your new book says, $3 trillion has been spent. So who are the real culprits? I mean, who are the bad guys in all of this? You know, I mean, who are the main companies, the main individuals? We know it's bigger than George Bush, Mr. Stiglitz.
Well, I mean, the point that you just made is I just want to emphasize $3 trillion is a lot of money, And if we expend that on helping people in the developing countries, helping America. I was just in Gary, Indiana, the city I was born in, and talking to the mayor, and he said, $3 trillion, we can't get 3 cents out of the federal government. Our city is decaying. Schools need help. Our road infrastructure filled with potholes, and we just can't get the money that we need to help revive our economy.
And it's no-bid contracts to Dubai. Halliburton isn't even here now.
Well, that is another part of the scandal. You asked who were the winners. There are actually only 2 winners in this war. The oil companies have made off fantastically with the soaring oil prices, but the real winners are the defense contractors, and number one on that, Halliburton. Their stock prices have increased, is almost tripled. In previous wars, there has been a sense of shared sacrifice. You send our young men and women off to fight. The rest of us make a contribution by paying taxes. There's an effort to make sure that there's no profiteering. Well, this is the first war in America's history that we put entirely on the credit card.
And that's what Lee Iacocca said. Stay there. Joseph Stiglitz, the new book, ladies and gentlemen, bookstores everywhere will tell you about it. The $3 trillion war on the other side of this quick break with our guest. We'll have 5 minutes with him on the other side. Really appreciate him spending time with us today.
It is a big idea.
Of course, if that happens, we know that's a disaster.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What do we do? I mean, if they continue the war, continue all the spending, and it doesn't stop, doesn't that assure a depression? I mean, if they don't make the reforms now, and it seems like they're not going to make any of the reforms.
Well, I think the good news is that we have democracy, and I think there's enough anger about what is going on. The fact is that money that they've defended what they've done on the basis of a need for security, but actually our security is less as a result of this war.
Well, exactly. There weren't many real terrorists before, but now the Army admits that it's been a factory creating them in Iraq.
That's right. Al-Qaeda was not there in 2003. Now Al-Qaeda is there.
Well, what about the asinine statement that, and we'll talk about this in an hour when we get back, the asinine statement that Iran is Al-Qaeda, and then McCain just said to Petraeus last week in the testimony, isn't Iran Al-Qaeda? And Petraeus said, yes, they are.
No, I mean, it's totally different. In fact, their perspectives on even Islam are totally different.
Okay, well, let's just come back, talk about the book, ending the war, what some of the steps are to reverse this, and then what will happen if we don't do something about the spending and all the insanity. We only have 5 minutes when we get back. Can you tell folks how low you think the dollar will go? I mean, just tell me, how low do you think the dollar is going to go, sir?
It's very hard to predict that, and the reason why it's very hard to predict that is that it depends more than almost anything else on what governments do. One of the problems is a lot of discussion about whether the European Central Bank is going to increase interest rates, lower interest rates. The new high in the dollar that just happened this week was a result in part because the rumors that the European Central Bank was going to raise their interest rate.
Stay there, sir. We're going live right now. Here we go. Joseph Stiglitz former chief economist, World Bank, Nobel Prize winner. He left in 2002, exposed a lot of the internal corruption, the IMF riot, how they go in and want economies to crater so they can buy it up, the 100-point plan, all of that. I got to get him back up, and I hate even talking over him. I just have so many questions. Your new book, The $3 Trillion War, breaking this down. If we don't end the war and it costs another $3 trillion in 5 years, will that ensure a deeper financial crisis, or is this good for us?
Oh, it's definitely not good for us. You know, there's an idea that goes back, a myth goes back to World War II, that wars are good for the economy.
Guns and butter.
But we know, at least since the time of Keynes, that you can stimulate the economy without going to war. And these other ways, investments in education, health, roads, infrastructure, have long-term productivity